Big thanks to Into the AM for helping me bring this content to you. Use my coupon code RISTER or my affiliate links for 10% off of any order. You'll be supporting my channel when you do. Thanks again to Into the AM. Today, Get on My Level X will be going down in Toronto, Canada, meaning that this is our last chance to take a look at the bracket and predict what'll go down. Today, we'll be doing just that, taking a look at the top 8 seeds of the 10th edition of GOML, seeing who's likely to outperform, underperform, who among the top seeds could realistically make a run into top 8, and who will win the entire tournament. As a side note, there is surprisingly no seeding graphic available for this tournament at the time I'm making this video, so I'm kind of just freeballing it here. Forgive me, but freeball or not, let's get right into it. The first seed of GOML X is Sonix. Unsurprising, since Sonix is the winner of last year's GOML, and as the defending champion is understandably the favorite to win. But there's something interesting about Sonix's chances at winning this tournament. If you've been keeping track of majors this year, or even if you haven't, then you might have realized something. Sonix hasn't won a single major in 2024 so far. In fact, of the top 4 seeds at GOML, the only one to not win a major this year is the 1 seed. Wrap your head around that. Even more confusingly, every single one of the top 4 seeds under Sonix has defeated him recently, which we'll go over more when we cover those respective players. It's no doubt that Sonix is the highest ranked and therefore likely the most skilled player attending GOML X. He's one of the 4 horsemen after all, the only one in attendance at this tournament. And yet, it feels as though Sonix's 1 seed is standing on a shaky foundation. But let's not forget, Sonix is a grinder. After each and every loss, he goes home and starts to practice yet again. So let's have a little bit of faith in his ability to adapt and grow as a player to overcome the people who have previously defeated him. Sonix's path to top 8 is pretty assured, as he has to defeat Jogibu and Riddles. Sonix is pretty upset proof, so I don't think he'd get upset by Jogibu, and I have absolute faith in Sonix being able to beat Riddles, since Sonic does really well into both Terry and Kazuya. Once in top 8 though, Sonix's path requires him to beat Light in winner semis, and then double eliminate Shadic to win the tournament. Problem is, Sonix just lost to both of those players. Light at Level Up Expo 2024 and Shadic at the Luminosity Smash Invitational. Granted, both sets were really close, with Sonix Light going to a Game 5 and Shadic needing to reverse sweep Sonix. All it'll take is a little bit of adaptation and Sonix will be able to take the slightest edge that he needs to win. Plus, Sonix has still been grinding coin boxes, and no doubt, Onin is quickly becoming one of Sonix's most practiced matchups. His 2 main competitors in North America both use her into him after all. In short, the question for Sonix is whether or not he's made the critical adaptations needed to win his first major of 2024. The second seed, as you've already seen, is Shadic, who is the biggest rising star in North America. Shadic is riding high off of wins at both Cirque du CFL 3 and the Luminosity Smash Invitational, but is also coming off of a slightly disappointing 7th place finish at Low Tide City 2024, after being double upset by Teaser and Geist. And even more troublesome for Shadic, this bracket path requires him to defeat one of his biggest bracket demons. Shadic's path to top 8 requires him to defeat Kananabe and Meister. Although, as we'll cover later, there's a good chance that Shadic fights Dabuz instead of Meister, given the Rosa Game & Watch matchup. This is a bit of a rough bracket for Shadic, as Fox is a bad matchup for Onin, although Shadic has recently overcome Light. So while it'll be hard, Shadic shouldn't lose here. But don't count Kananabe out. We all know what happened the last time he came over to North America, don't we? In terms of either Meister or Dabuz, Shadic has done well against them recently, but it was all in relatively close sets. His last set against both players going Game 5. So Shadic is really gonna have to be at the top of his game to make it through this bracket. And we haven't even made it to top 8 yet. In winter semifinals, Shadic has to defeat Tweak, who is probably the closest thing Shadic has to a bracket demon. And worse still, Shadic is not only seeded to fight Tweak, but do it twice, as they're seeded to fight in losers finals as well. In short, the main question for Shadic is whether or not he's at the top of his game, because if he is, he absolutely has the potential to win this bracket, but anything less than 110% will result in a subpar finish for North America's fastest rising star. The third seed is Tweak, and as it usually is, the question for Tweak all revolves around the blocky menace himself, Steve. You see, to make top 8, Tweak has to defeat Neo, which would definitely be good practice for Shadic, but is then seeded to go up against Onin. And as we all know, Tweak has a Steve problem. We all remember when Tweak was eliminated at 7th place as the first seed of Collision 2024 after being upset twice by Steve mains, and one of them had been Onin. In my opinion, unless we see some dramatic adaptation or dramatic character swaps, Tweak is basically guaranteed to enter top 8 from losers as the best case scenario. But let's assume for a moment that the bracket goes as seeded, that Tweak not only makes top 8 from losers but then loses to Shadic in winners semis. Both events I see as unlikely, but still. For the sake of argument, let's assume it goes as seeded. That means Tweak would have to get through losers bracket, where he's seeded to beat MKLeo and Light before losing to Shadic again. Interestingly enough, if Tweak manages to beat Leo and Light, there's a fairly likely chance he beats Shadic too and makes grands. From there, we know it's possible for Tweak to beat Sonics, as proven by LMBM 2024, so you could make the argument that, as long as he makes top 8, Tweak could win this bracket. There's only two problems. The other side of losers quarters sees Light fighting Onin, and both of these possibilities are trouble. Onin for the reasons we covered earlier, and Light because of the fact that Light swept Tweak the last time they fought at Level Up Expo 2024. In short, Tweak has the potential to beat both of the top 2 seeds and win the tournament. The big question is whether or not Tweak can make it there before getting upset by a Steve player. The 4th seed of GOML X is Light, who, shockingly, seems to have a pretty decent path into top 8. To make it, he has to beat Siski, which is a good matchup for Fox, and MKLeo. Sure, Leo could beat Light, but I don't think he will. Why? Because Light's actually been playing pretty hot lately, most obviously from his win at Level Up Expo, which I've mentioned like 20 times already. Now, if Motsunabe defeats Leo, there's a chance that maybe Light could be upset, but again, I'm not very confident in that happening. After having made top 8, Light is seeded to lose to Sonics in semis and then drop into losers and beat Onin before losing to Tweak. Honestly, this almost seems backwards. Light beat Sonics the last time they fought, albeit in a close game. Light swept Tweak the last time they fought, like I already covered, and so the main issue here is Onin. Steve is a pretty good matchup into Fox, and although he struggled with it in the past, Light did beat Mia's Steve at the Invitational too, Light's only major win so far this year. Still, if I'm Light, I'd rather upset Sonics and make winners finals without even having to worry about fighting Onin. Out of every player we've covered so far, I think Light is probably the most safe bet for not getting upset, as he really doesn't have any problems in his bracket path before making it to his projected seeding. In short, the main question for Light is whether or not he can repeat his previous wins over all of the top 3 seeds and take the tournament by surprise. But I mean, even if he doesn't, I don't see Light getting upset, but please don't make me eat my words. The number 5 and 6 seeds of GOML X are MKLeo and Onin. Let's go over Leo first. MKLeo feels really bipolar this year. Leo started off 2024 pretty decently and then started doing really well, even winning King Khan over Spargo. And then he went to Japan and got his best ever placement at a Japanese major at Delta 8. But then Kagadi B12 happened and MKLeo had a pretty big underperformance there, as well as at Collision 2024. So honestly, it's really hard to predict how MKLeo will do. MKLeo is seeded to beat Motsunabe and then lose to Light, both of which being sets that could go the other way. Assuming it goes as seeded, Leo has to beat Lima to make top 8 through losers. And while Leo did beat Lima the last time they fought at Collision, it went down to the wire. In top 8, Leo is seeded to beat Riddles and then lose to Tweak. Problem with this is that Leo has lost to Riddles the last 2 times they've fought. So there's a chance that Leo doesn't pull out the victory here, especially since Leo has been using more Roy and Riddles is seeded to beat Cola earlier on in the bracket, meaning he's gonna have plenty of Roy practice. In short, the big question for MKLeo is whether or not he's going to get upset early on in bracket, and if he doesn't, just how far he can push this run. It feels like we haven't seen Onin at a major in a while, and I have no idea why, since we literally saw Onin at both Collision and Diamond Dust, with top 3 placements at both tournaments. Maybe it's a me problem, I don't know. I think, of all the top 8 seeds, Onin is the most likely to outperform and exceed the original seeding. Onin is seeded to beat Lima and then lose to Tweak, but both sets could go the other way. Onin's sets with Lima are always close, and Lima has a lot of Steve practice. But if Onin does beat Lima, then Onin will for sure beat Tweak. If Onin doesn't, then they'd have to beat Motsunabe to make top 8 through losers, which seems fine given how Onin beat Tilde pretty easily at Collision. Onin's path through losers includes defeating Meister and Light, which I think will happen if it comes down to it, at which point Onin likely gets 3rd after beating Tweak again in loser semis, or potentially even making grands if Onin manages to defeat Shadic. And that's what's so interesting. Shadic swept Onin at Collision, but at Diamond Dust right after, Onin beat Shadic in a Game 5 set. This means that if Onin enters top 8 through losers, there's the potential to make grands through losers side. And if Onin makes top 8 through winners, there's the potential to make winners finals. I don't think Onin could beat Sonics though, so I think the highest potential for Onin is second place. In short, I think Onin is almost guaranteed to outplace the original seeding, and the biggest question is how Onin will do against Shadic. Lastly, the 7th and 8th seeds of GOML X are Riddles and Meister. Let's go over Riddles first. Riddles is seeded to beat Cola and then lose to Sonics, which I do think will happen. But can I just say how cruel it is that Cola is seeded into Kazuya? Guys, we're trying to get Cola not to retire. Why did we do this? In losers, Riddles is seeded to beat Dabuz to make top 8. And trust me, we'll go over Dabuz later, since I think he's really underseeded. But if this set does go down, I think Dabuz will win. In top 8 though, Riddles is seeded to lose to MKLeo for 7th. If this set does happen, I think Riddles will win it, at which point he probably loses to Tweak for 5th. In short, the big question for Riddles is whether or not he can make top 8, which will be decided when he fights Dabuz. The last top 8 seed of GOML X is Meister, the only top 8 seed to never win a major. But Meister is also coming off of a really good trip to Japan, where Meister was the best performing North American player across the entirety of Golden Week. We've seen before how a Japan trip will result in a dramatic level up, so perhaps that will be the case for Meister at GOML, but there's actually a really big problem with Meister's bracket. He's seeded to beat Dabuz before losing to Shadic. And as we saw at the Luminosity Smash Invitational, Meister is so down bad against Dabuz he even tried a secondary Cloud. So I don't think Meister is winning this set, tragically enough. Meister could still make top 8 though by defeating Riddles, but looking at the original path, Meister is seeded to beat Cola to make top 8, a set I am sure people would want to go the other way. But it's hard to say since we haven't seen Cola since Collision. We haven't really seen a lot of Cola since Collision. In top 8, Meister is seeded to lose to Onin, which I think will happen if it comes down to it. In short, the big question for Meister is if losing to Dabuz means an insurmountable losers run, or if Meister can make top 8 anyways. And now it's time for us to go over some of the non-top 8 seeds that I believe will or have the massive potential to outperform and make top 8. Starting with the one with the most potential, Dabuz. Dabuz is on a dramatic rise, but despite that, isn't seeded to make top 8. All Dabuz has to do is upset Meister, which I think will happen, and then upset either Shadic or Cola. Since Roy is a much worse matchup for Rosalina than Corrin is, Dabuz would probably prefer to beat Shadic and make top 8 through winners. Speaking of Cola, like I said, it's a bit of a hard call, since we haven't seen Cola in a hot minute. But Cola will fight either Meister or Dabuz to make top 8, and I think Cola has a pretty good chance to beat either one of them. I think Lima and Motsunabe could potentially make top 8, but their respective sets are far more difficult. Lima has to beat Leo, and Motsunabe has to beat Onin. I think Motsunabe does have some really good Steve experience, so maybe that one is more likely, but I think Onin would still win. The players seeded to get 13th include Neo, Kananabe, Siski, and Jogibu. I think Jogibu and Neo will likely place their seed, given who they're seeded to fight. Siski having to fight Motsunabe is rough, since that's a pretty bad matchup for Samus. But there's one situation where Siski could make top 8, if he beats Motsunabe and then has to fight Tweak in losers. That's a really bad matchup for Diddy Kong, so Siski could potentially defeat Tweak in order to make top 8 through losers. But that requires both Tweak to lose and Siski to beat Motsunabe. And lastly, Kananabe has the potential to make some big upsets, given how he absolutely popped off at Port Priority 8, the last time he was in North America. I'm not entirely sure if it'll end up happening, but just keep your eye on Kananabe. And that about wraps up everything from this tournament's top seeds. My big overall predictions for GOML X includes one of the top 2 seeds winning, Onin massively outperforming the original seeding, Tweak underperforming, and Dabuz making top 8. Today, GOML X will start to go down, and upsets are bound to take place. Everything I've mentioned may not even happen, but no matter what goes down, I'll be here to cover it all. That's going to be it for today's video. Before I go, shout out to my patrons Seth Laster, Fireskull333, Logan S, Persipom, Wawa, Mrs. Sinister, Happy Feet, Oceanman, Misty Bot, and my Tutsi patrons Iltis, Diamond Blaze, and Ben L. Additionally, shout out my YouTube members DJ Jr., Defective, Boston R, Gonus B, Kirby Fan, Nexus, Loco Soko, and my Tuesday members Mike G, Wu-Tang Forever, and Stormtrooper. Also, shout out my gifted tier 2 members with their usernames Ruby Master, Kuro Ruko, LBB74, and Enchanted IBE. Lastly, extra special thanks to my tier 3 supporters Fat Blizzard, who says Big D will make it out of his slump, Avidoon, who says Mr. Rice is the go to Smash content, Iltis, who says Shadic is top 3, and Grant I Am, who hasn't given me their message yet. If you want to support me using any of these methods, links are in the description down below. Don't forget to use my coupon code RISTER in order to get 10% off of any order from Indie the AM. And lastly, I want to give one last sincere thanks to Let Me Fly for their continued support of my channel. Link to their Twitter is also in the description. Don't miss the streams and shorts I'm producing over the weekend, but until then, I've been Mr. Mice, and thank you all so very much for watching.